Good morning again. So today's going to be super interesting. Brian is sick. We found out yesterday at like 12 o'clock, so here we go. We're going to send it and let the Lord do what he does. Sound good? Let's do it. No, I'm excited for today. I'm excited for this message because usually I have a couple of weeks to prepare for a message, and I have a couple of weeks for that message to kind of settle in and me to start to apply that message to my life. Last night as I was preparing, I was like, man, this is going to hit me good, and I hope it kind of does the same for you. This is going to be a message that some of you have probably heard before. It might seem kind of simple at first, but what my goal is today isn't really to teach you anything new. It's to encourage you and challenge you in your faith where you are today. We're going to be kind of doing what we did last week of examining our lives, seeing areas of growth, kind of like how we started last week as we were reflecting. So we're going to see some areas and examine some areas in our life that we want to see growth in. And today we're going to be doing that as we read through Daniel chapter 3, if you want to go ahead and turn there. We're going to be reading through the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. That sound good? Yeah? Some of you might know it, some of you may not, and that's okay. But before we get into this story of those three guys, I have a question, and I don't want you to think I'm weird when I ask it, okay? The question is, have you ever been worried that the cash you have in your wallet or wherever is counterfeit? Anybody? I knew this was going to happen. Why do I have this weird fear that the cash that I have is going to be counterfeit? It's a weird question, I know. But yeah, I just have this weird fear that no matter where I get it from, besides the bank, I'm pretty secure with the bank. I think they're going to take care of me. But wherever I get it from, it's going to be fake. And I don't have fake money. I don't make fake money. But I have this weird fear about it. Every time I get a $20 bill and I go to pay, I'm going through Bojangles, get my 4-piece Supreme. I'm like, Lord, please let this work. Please let this work. You know, they have that marker. And it's like, man, I don't want it to look bad. But yeah, I have this weird fear, and I don't know why. And it seems like I'm the only one that has this problem, which is really awkward now. It's okay. So anyways, all jokes aside, just like how counterfeit bills, the fake bills, don't pass the test, right? They don't pass that little marker test. They have other tests. You can look up into the light and see things, whatever it is. They don't pass the test. Today we're going to be talking about how we as followers sometimes don't pass the test. And I want to be perfectly clear, there's no actual test you have to pass. But what I mean is, man, there's things that come up in life that are just challenging, right? There's things in life where we fall short of where we should be, the things we should do. We fall into pressure of the world. We don't trust the Lord's word sometimes. We kind of just try to do our own thing. We say things that we know we shouldn't say. We do things that we know are wrong. And sometimes we allow this unhealthy fear inside of us to lead us, just like I do with counterfeit bills. I'm like, Lord, please let this work. If not, I don't know what I'm going to do. And the story that we're going to be talking about today with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego kind of have all of these things tied into it. You're going to see today how all of those things, how the opportunity to fall short comes up, the opportunity to fall into the pressure of the world comes up, how they can say things that they know they shouldn't say, how they can do things that they know is wrong. And what's interesting for me is that for most of us, those temptations show up almost daily. Can you think of some times where those temptations kind of come into your life? The question I want you to ask is, where in your life are you tempted to fall into the pressures of the world? Where are you tempted to say things you know you shouldn't say? Where are you tempted to do things you know you shouldn't do that are wrong? And where do you allow unhealthy fear to lead you? So that's what we're going to be thinking about as we go through this passage today. And we're going to go ahead and start by reading through Daniel chapter 3, 1 through 15, if we can get that up here. There we go. Let's read it together. It says, King Nebuchadnezzar made a gold statue 90 feet tall, pretty impressive, and 9 feet wide, and set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then he sent the messages to the high officers, officials, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the provincial office of officials to come to the dedication of the statue he had set up. Pretty prideful. So all of these officials came and stood before the statue King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then a herald shouted out, "People of all races and nations and languages, listen to the king's command. When you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, don't know. And I hate this word because every time I say it, I sound really country, lyre, harp, pipes, and other musical instruments, bow to the ground to worship King Nebuchadnezzar's gold statue. Anyone who refuses to obey will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace." So at the sound of the musical instruments, all the people, whatever their race or nation or language, bowed to the ground and worshiped the gold statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. But some of the astrologers went to the king and informed him on the Jews. We got a snitch. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "Long live the king. You issued a decree requiring all the people to bow down and worship the gold statue when they hear the sound of all the musical instruments." I'm not going to repeat it. I don't want to embarrass myself. Go. Give me 3. That decree also states that those who refuse to obey must be thrown into the blazing furnace. But there are some Jews, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, whom you have put in charge of the province of Babylon. It's pretty important there. They pay no attention to you, your majesty. They refuse to serve your gods and do not worship the gold statue you have set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar flew into rage and ordered that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought before him. When they were brought in, Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you refuse to serve my gods and to worship the gold statue I have set up? I will give you one more chance to bow down and worship the statue I have made when you hear the sound of the musical instruments. But if you refuse, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace, and then what God will be able to rescue you from my power." So we're going to pause there. We got a lot of crazy stuff going on, right? So here we see King Nebuchadnezzar, who in all of his power here, he's kind of illustrating his power by creating a golden statue that he tries to push everybody, make everybody worship by threatening death. Pretty extreme, right? Pretty crazy to do this or die kind of thing. Not a lot of people, I would imagine, really like that kind of ordeal. But imagine how all the people felt when they had to bow down and worship this golden statue at this time. For some of them, they spent their life serving the Lord, doing the Lord's work, trusting in the Lord, worshiping God. But now if they stand for what they believe, they're going to be killed in a very terrible way by being thrown into a fiery furnace. Quite literally being thrown into fire. And this had to be such a challenging thing for them to process, right? Just think about this for a second. Having to decide, man, do I stick with what I believe? Do I try to hide it for as long as I can? Or do I just go with the flow of what everybody else is doing at this time and bow down and worship at this golden statue? That had to be such a hard thing to process. And for us, we're not, for the most part, some people in the world are, we're not forced to do anything with death, but we do have our own do this or else kind of things come up in life, right? Can anybody think of anything in your life where you're like, I have to do this or else something happens to me? Sometimes like this pressure is subtle, whether it has to do with fitting in, whether it has to do with not standing out, kind of the same thing, right? Don't upset anyone. We have to kind of go with the flow. Don't speak the truth. Just go along with it. Keep the peace. Does anybody relate with that? You have to kind of go with the flow or else something is going to happen to you. And sometimes it can be more direct. Sometimes it can be a go with the flow or lose your job. Lose your reputation, lose your relationships, lose your comfort. One of the quick examples that comes to my mind, especially at this time of year, it's not that drastic or anything, but at the end of the football season, what happens to most of the football coaches that aren't doing what the program expects them to do? They get fired just like that. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. You're out of here. We'll find the next guy up. it's that kind of thing. But sometimes in our life, it can feel a little bit more harsh. They're getting paid millions of dollars. They'll be okay. But in our life, when we have to lose our job because we don't go with the flow, that can seem way different. When we have to lose relationships with people that maybe we're in contact with every day, that can seem way different. Whether it's at work, whether it's at home, whether it's with friends, whether it's just out and about, having to do this or else kind of thing can be a challenging thing for us to handle. And just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego here, it's crazy how our faith is always tested when our obedience is required. Everybody with me there? Our faith is always tested when our obedience is required. So my question here is, where in life right now is your obedience to Christ being tested? Where in your life right now is your obedience to Christ being tested? Is it in your work with maintaining your integrity to do the things you know are right, but everybody else is just overlooking or going with the flow of everything else? It can be a hard thing to kind of break away from the pack with. Is standing for the truth of God's word at your school when everybody else seems to go against it because it's not the cool thing to do? Is it the everyday decisions in life where you feel pressured to do certain things just to keep up with society? Just go into debt to get that thing. It's going to be okay. It's worth it. You're going to have it. Everybody's going to think you're cool, right? Just go out with the boys at night. It's going to be fine. Everybody does it. It's good. All of these things we feel pressured to keep up with the world to do because it's just normal. Sometimes can be a really hard decision to say no to. So where in your life is your obedience to Christ being tested right now? Think about that one as we continue on to Daniel 3:16 through 30. This is where it gets interesting. There we go. So 16, it says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you." Bold thing to say. "If we are thrown into a blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty." Pause there for just a second. I think that's really interesting that they showed two different sides of faith here. One, they had the faith to say he is able to. God is able to save us as we get thrown into this thing if that happens. But then also like just the pure confidence they had in this moment to say he will rescue us from your power. I think that is so huge. So don't miss that small detail as we continue. 18, "But even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your majesty." They start to get a little bit frisky here, and they say that we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue you have set up. Nebuchadnezzar was so furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that his face became distorted with rage. I love this because like that picture right there, I can think of Eden, my daughter. Anytime I say no, it's like, you're so mean. He became distorted with rage. His face probably became red, all scrunched up, angry. And he commanded that the furnace be heated 7 times hotter than usual. And I did some research on this. 7 is often used as just like an extreme in the Bible. It doesn't necessarily mean 7 times hotter. If it was 7 times hotter, the place would probably burn down. But it was hot, very, very hot. Verse 20, "Then he ordered some of the strongest men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So they tied them up and threw them into the furnace, fully dressed with their pants, turbans, robes, and other garments. And because the king, in his anger, had demanded such a hot fire in the furnace, the flames killed the soldiers as they threw the 3 men in, instantly threw them in." Has anybody ever set your oven to 425 or whatever, and you open it to put it in, and it's just like, burned them, gone. Crazy. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, securely tied, fell into the roaring flames. But suddenly Nebuchadnezzar jumped up in amazement and exclaimed to his advisors, "Didn't we tie up 3 men and throw them into the furnace?" He knew this. "Yes, your majesty, we certainly did," they replied. "Look," Nebuchadnezzar shouted, "I see 4 men unbound, walking around in the fire unharmed, and the 4th looks like a god." Then Nebuchadnezzar came as close as he could to the door of the flaming furnace and shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, servants of the Most High God." What a switch right there. "Of the Most High God, come out, come here." So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stepped out of the fire. Then the high officers, officials, governors, and advisors crowded around them and saw that the fire had not touched them. Not a hair on their heads was singed, and their clothes was not scorched. Clothing was not scorched. They didn't even smell like smoke. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praise to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He sent his angel to rescue his servants whom trusted in him. They defied the king's command and were willing to die rather than to serve or worship any god except their own God. Therefore, I make this decree. If any people, whatever their race or nation or language, speak a word against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they will be torn limb from limb, and their house will be turned into heaps of rubble. There is no other God who can rescue like this." And then verse 30, then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to even higher positions in the province of Babylon. Wow. I love this story, don't y'all? That is so cool to me. Really, I think when I first heard this, I was like, wow, that is what mature faith looks like in Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. To be able to stand firm for what they believe in, even when they are faced with death. And kind of back to the first point there that we were reading as we got into the heat of things, they believed that God could save them. I think that's an important first step, to believe that God could save them. And for us, I think we're there, right? For most of us, we're there. We believe God can save us. And then they hope that he would save them. So they're kind of making the next step. God, I know you can. Please do it. Please do it. And then their final thing that they said before they got thrown in, they trusted even if God didn't do it. And that's the part that I feel like for me especially is often hard. It's hard to get to that third step of even if, God, you don't do it, I still think you're good. I still think you're worthy. I still think, God, you are worthy of our praise. Because oftentimes, like I said, we can believe God can save us. We hope that he saves us if needed. But we struggle with trusting him even if he doesn't. And probably for good reason we struggle with this, because it's hard. When he doesn't do it, right? When he doesn't save us, when he doesn't come in like we think he should, sometimes life gets hard. Sometimes we struggle. Sometimes it hurts. Whatever it is, it just makes life a little bit harder. And when that happens, it just makes us not want to do it anymore, right? Like, God, you're not doing what we expected you to do. And let me explain what I'm talking about here. You know, many of us, including myself, like I said, we struggle with this kind of faith that's not really faith. It's more of like a condition where, God, as long as you do A, B, C, and D, I'm going to trust you. Everybody with me? Everybody had that thought before? God, as long as you do this, as long as I get that job, I trust you. As long as, God, you heal me, I trust you. Brian's probably at home saying, God, as long as you take this sickness away, you are good. I trust God as long as life goes smoothly. Have you ever had that thought? You struggle with that? Unfortunately, that's not the faith that passes the test here. That's the faith that leads us down a road of being upset, let down, angry with God because we think he's not doing exactly what he said he would do, when really we made this up in our own mind. On the opposite side here, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego have this even if faith. This is where I want to challenge you today, is this even if faith. And this is true faith that says, God, you are worthy whether or not I have the outcome I want. That can be a hard pill to swallow, right? That's passing faith. That's the faith that isn't based on any condition, any desire, any deal you have with God, you try to make with God, but it's based on solely him and him being worthy. Amen? Amen. That's the true passing faith here. So my question here is, where in life do you have to release this as long as faith, as long as you do this faith, and replace it with the even if faith? Where in your life do you need to switch those two, swap those two out? And like I said, usually I have a long time to process this and to think about this and to apply this into my life. And last night as I was preparing this, I was like, man, God, like I need that right now. I need that right now because if I'm honest, I'm struggling with this right now in my own life. My family and I are possibly, hopefully, going to be moving in May to Castle Hayne, moving to the Hayne life. But with that comes a whole bunch of conditions. A whole bunch of conditions. We have to deal with all the paperwork. I hate paperwork. It stresses me out. We have to deal with things going on with the building of our house. So like everything has to work out in the way we need it to, in the timeline that we need it to. Anybody with me? We have to sell our current house. Cough, cough, realtor. Cough, cough, realtor, wherever you are. We have to do all of these things. And it's, God, as long as, I'm sitting here thinking, as long as this all works out, I know you are a part of it. As long as this all works out, I know you are a part of it. And I'm praying so hard that God works it out just as I want him to. God, please make this happen, right? Lord, I trust you as long as everything works out smoothly. That's the kind of faith I have in this scenario. And you know what? The cool thing is that God so far has worked everything out really smoothly. The fact that we are where we are, only God's blessing. And I'm so thankful for that. But I'm still in my mind, God, as long as you do this, you're still good. You're still good. But I was challenged with this thought last night, but what if something happens that isn't part of the plan? What if something happens with the building? What if something happens with the selling? What if something happens with the paperwork that isn't part of the plan, that slows down the process, that maybe changes the whole thing? How do I respond in that moment? And the answer is to rely on the even if kind of faith. I have to rely that even if it doesn't go as I want it to, that God is still good. That God still has a plan, that God's still going to take care of us. And at the end of the day, this isn't that big of a deal. I still have a roof over my head. I still have my family, and we're all good. That's the even if faith that I need to start converting into. So that's my example in my own life. Where is your example in your life? Where are you struggling with the transferring over from as long as faith to the even if faith? And then to continue on, you want to know one of my favorite parts of this story is, you know where in verse 20 it said King Nebuchadnezzar had like the biggest guys come in and tie him up. Like, think about the biggest guys in here coming in, tying them up, throwing them into the fire. They were thrown in, and somehow, after this very, very, very hot fire, nothing was burned on them except for what? The ropes. That was the only thing that was burned. So the one thing that was bounding them going in is now gone. Isn't that amazing? Like, their clothes are fine, their hair is fine, everything's fine, but the ropes that were binding them are now gone. King Nebuchadnezzar commanded them to come out, and they just stepped out. They're like, oh, we're good. That was a good try. And sometimes, I want you to realize that sometimes those really hard things that come up against you in life aren't meant to destroy you. Sometimes they're there to challenge you and to strengthen your even if kind of faith, so that way you can stand up and pass the test when the tests come. You with me? Come on now. Like, it's there for a reason. That faith that can, when you're going through those challenges, they get rid of the things that are binding you and you don't even know it, and you walk out and you're like, I get it. God, I get it. And sometimes it happens right after. Sometimes it happens 10 years down the road. Whatever it is, we get it after that God was freeing us from the things that were binding us in the beginning to help us pass the test. And we're all here trying to pass the test our own way. We all have our own furnace of some kind. So the question here is, what kind of furnace do you feel like you're in right now? What is God freeing you from in that furnace right now? Some examples are a furnace of grief. Are you just in grief right now? Is it illness? Is it stress, anxiety? Is it financial situations, problems, strains, whatever? Is it life uncertainty or changes coming up that, you feel like you're in it and you're like, God, what are you doing right now? It doesn't make sense. This is stressful. This isn't what I planned. What is it? And then take a second to kind of see what God is freeing you from. What is he giving you freedom in? Because it's funny to me that they get thrown into the fire. And initial reaction here is to jump back out of the fire if I can, right? They just stay in it until they're commanded to come out. They sat in it. It's a whole nother sermon I could give. I'm not going to, but they sat in the fire. They learned what was happening, and they stepped out, and they allowed what God took off of them, the binding, to do what his will was in that moment, which was to completely, start to change Nebuchadnezzar's heart. So what is your furnace, and what is God freeing you from in that? So as we wrap up, I challenge you to examine your life and be honest with yourself, right? I had to be honest with myself last night. It was not fun, but I had to be honest. Where in life are you struggling to pass the test? Where is your obedience to Christ being tested? Where do you need to replace that as long as faith with even if kind of faith? And you may not be thrown into a fiery furnace, let's hope not, but you do face pressures in the world. You are tempted to say things you shouldn't say. You're tempted to do things you know are wrong. And we're tempted to live our life with unhealthy fear leading us. And all of these things are trying to make you, quote unquote, fail the test, to lessen your faith of the amazing God that we serve. But can I remind you of something real quick? That you don't have to be perfect, and there's this thing called grace. I just want to make that perfectly clear, that sometimes we forget and we feel like we got to be perfect in this. We feel like it's pass the test or else, but it's okay to fall short. And it's because of what Jay was just talking about earlier when we were taking up communion, that Christ came. He lived a perfect life. He died for you. He came back to life on that third day, and he ascended to heaven. And now when God looks at you, he doesn't see your mistakes. He doesn't see you failing the test. He doesn't see you messing up. What he sees is his son, Jesus Christ, and all of his perfection. Come on. So for us, our goal here, our challenge here, is to continue to live out the sanctification process that we're in, of becoming more like Jesus each and every day. That classic Brian saying of 1 degree of glory at a time, to help us to pass the test as we go through life's ups and downs. And we can trust that he's going to be with us in it, growing us, shaping us, molding us, forming us into who he has to be. Amen?